If you've experienced deep hurt or abuse in a close relationship, you might find yourself hypersensitive or overreacting in other relationships. What you really need to understand is that experiences of abuse, deception, betrayal, or other serious harm in your relationship leaves you with a deep sense of mistrust in other people. The hurt and the betrayal that you've experienced colors the lens through which you interpret other people's behavior. You become good at scanning the horizon for signs of threat or danger. So when someone doesn't return your call, when they seem to be a bit short with you, when they struggle to see your point of view, when they make an insensitive joke that inadvertently touches on a sore spot, boom, you're on high alert. You're anxious, you're fearful, you're angry. Your adrenaline is pumping, your heart is pounding, you're hot, you're sweaty, and you're ready to act in order to keep yourself safe. Maybe you get confrontational, but the effect is to generate more conflict, or the other person starts to avoid you. Or maybe you quietly write someone off and withdraw yourself from the relationship. But in the end, this can result in endless toxic conflict and you feeling very much alone and abandoned in your relationships. And of course, this only strengthens your mistrust of other people. But as you can see, this is a cycle. And the good news is we can interrupt this cycle at any point. Let's start with those intense physical reactions that you might be experiencing. That heart-pounding, adrenaline-fueled reaction is very likely to fuel fearful and angry interpretations of other people's behavior. And it's certainly going to get in the way of thinking clearly and objectively about what might be going on. So if you find yourself experiencing this intense physical reaction, take that as a cue not to address conflict, not to try to address an issue in a relationship. Instead, it's a cue that you need to begin to calm things down physically. So take a breath, maybe go for a walk or take some other kind of physical exercise, or give yourself enough of a break doing something else to distract yourself so your body has a chance to calm down physically and you can get out of that angry, fearful mindset before you try to think or do anything about this relationship challenge. This can be very hard to do because those intense feelings of fear and anger may be telling you that this situation is urgent and that you need to act right now in order to protect yourself. But that sense of urgency is exactly why it is so important to slow things down so that you can question those initial assumptions that you have and not act impulsively in a state of extreme anger or extreme fear and do something that you might later regret when you're in a calmer mindset. And this leads on nicely to the second way that you can disrupt this cycle, and that's by questioning the thoughts that you're having. Your past experiences of hurt, abuse, or betrayal have taught you that you need to be on guard. You may find yourself zoning in on everything they've ever said or done and putting the worst possible interpretation on it. Before you know it, you've convinced yourself that you've met yet another abusive narcissist, another person who can't be trusted, another person who's going to betray you, disrespect you, or hurt you. So start by reminding yourself that your past experiences have given you a certain story, a story that other people cannot be trusted. But this story is not necessarily a true story. It may not reflect the reality of your current situation. That's why it's very helpful to try to zoom out and see the bigger picture. When someone does something hurtful, perhaps they don't return your call or they're a little bit irritable, try to stay curious and open-minded rather than jumping to the worst possible conclusions. Now, a word of warning. Remaining open-minded and curious about what might be going on does not mean dismissing your feelings or your thoughts out of hand. Sometimes survivors of abuse are only too aware of their heightened sensitivity, and you might find yourself questioning your reactions to the point of doubting your own perceptions, even when someone else's behavior is persistently unkind, cruel, dismissive, or abusive. In that case, the story you may be telling yourself is not that other people cannot be trusted, but that you cannot be trusted. That you're overly sensitive, or too needy, or too demanding. And if that is the case for you, then maybe that story also needs to be rewritten. The goal is not to silence your instincts or your feelings, or to always assume the best possible interpretation of someone else's behavior. Rather, it's to create enough space so you can assess things from a balanced perspective that helps bring you a sense of clarity. Questions you might ask yourself include, is this person consistently disrespectful or dismissive even after you've shared your feelings? Are there patterns of behavior that leave you feeling diminished or disrespected over time? Do you find yourself always making excuses for them? Do they show empathy and willingness to understand your perspective? Do they act from a place of care and concern for you and your well-being? What might your best friend say about this person? If this person was in your best friend's life, how would you feel about them? Building this balanced awareness can help you differentiate between ordinary conflict and misunderstanding that impact all human relationships, and patterns of abusive, hurtful, or manipulative behavior that are really not aligned with a respectful, reciprocal relationship. Remember, awareness is about trying to see things as they really are, recognizing how your past experiences can color your perceptions, leading you to overreact or to minimize really bad behaviors and underreact. Now, as you zoom out and try to take a more balanced perspective and calm yourself down physically, it's likely that the intensity of your emotional reactions will begin to come down. But let's look at the third way you can disrupt this cycle, by addressing your emotions. One really helpful thing to do here is to name the emotions that you're feeling. This is anger. This is sadness. This is hurt. This is fear. Now, these emotions can sometimes be triggered by hurts that have occurred in previous relationships more than by what's going on in the here and now. But even if you recognize that your intense emotional reaction may stem more from past hurts than your present reality, don't dismiss your emotions or tell yourself that they don't matter or that you shouldn't be feeling them. You can tend to those difficult emotions by showing care and concern for yourself, by soothing yourself, by doing things that you find comforting, or by confiding in a close friend who you know to be kind and caring towards you. As you tend to those emotions with care and compassion, you can wisely recognize that they may stem more from past experiences of abuse and betrayal than the current reality of your situation. You can talk to those angry and fearful parts of you, telling them that circumstances are different and that the need for self-preservation and self-protection may be much less urgent than it feels. Another really helpful strategy when you know you're experiencing an intense emotional overreaction is to ask yourself how you feel on a scale of 0 to 100. One reason survivors of abusive relationships can have such extreme emotional reactions is because in an abusive relationships, you never know where you stand or when things are going to flare up. So in an ordinary relationship, a moment of conflict or irritability can feel catastrophic. And so your emotions will tend to go from 0 to 100 very, very quickly. Ask yourself to rate the intensity of your emotion from 0 to 100. Grading emotions in this way can help to bring them down, help them to feel more manageable, and help shift you out of that very black and white mindset. This can really help you to differentiate between a devastating threat to your physical or psychological safety and an ordinary conflict in a human relationship. And this leads very nicely on to the fourth way that you can disrupt this cycle, and that's by changing your behavioral patterns. Are you someone who tends to lash out and overreact when you feel threatened? Or are you someone who tends to go quiet and withdraw? Or are you someone who becomes very self-sacrificing and people-pleasing? Whatever the pattern may be, these behaviors will often fuel the very problem they're trying to solve, One of the most vital steps here is not to react straight away or impulsively. Give yourself enough pause to process your emotions, to check in with yourself, to question whether the feelings you have are a response to something happening in the here and now, or a reaction to something being triggered from your past. You may even want to share with the other person that you want to take some time to think before you react. This helps to create space so you can respond thoughtfully and not in ways that lead you to withdraw or lead you to escalate conflict or lead you to people please and sacrifice your own needs. You'll also be in a much better position to understand what's going on inside of you, and if you decide to share it with the other person. There are two avenues for changing your behavior. One is what you take from the other person. See if you can listen to the other person's perspective with a sense of curiosity and interest. Try to understand where they're coming from, even if you don't entirely agree with everything they might be saying. By listening with empathy and openness, you actually put yourself in a situation where you can assess where they're coming from. The other way of addressing your communication is how you communicate your thoughts and feelings with the other person. You may need to work on communicating your thoughts and feelings clearly and assertively. That doesn't mean that you have to point the finger of blame at the other person. Examples might include saying, "I really missed you when you didn't call." Or perhaps you may need to say, "I love the time we spend together, but when you're drinking, it's really not that fun for me." Or, "I know you didn't intend for that joke to be hurtful, but it really hit a sore spot for me." As you communicate in this way, pay close attention to their reaction. You're really giving the other person the best possible opportunity to show themselves in a good light. Are they open, willing to listen, willing to apologize and to make amends? Do they show concern for you and for how you're feeling? Or are they dismissive, derogatory, even abusive? All of this can create a real possibility of building trust in yourself, building trust in other people, and building healthier, trusting, fulfilling relationships in the future. Rebuilding trust after hurtful and abusive relationships can feel like an impossible task. But it is one of the greatest joys of my work as I walk alongside survivors of abusive and hurtful relationships to help them build this in new relationships with worthy partners. So if you'd like to know how you can rebuild trust in a new relationship, check out this video right here.